show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live podcast. And it's now.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TFM Live, the official podcast of FullMountMMA.com. I am Brian Coyle. I am joined alongside Sean Stanley. And Sean, I don't know how it's going for your Miami Hurricanes right now in the tournament, but it's going great for me up in here in New York because we finally can go see a mixed martial arts bout without it being underground.
Yeah, it got through the, what do you have, like 23 committees they had to go through?
Oh, it went through a variety of committees.
That was crazy.
Yeah, most especially the people that were comparing it to slavery, pornography, a whole variety of different things.
Yeah,
that video.
There was a little bit of craziness going on there.
to put it bluntly, yeah, there was a lot. But if you have not have heard already, New Yorkers will tell you about it because that's what we pretty much do. Even from New Jersey, we do that as well. The State Assembly of New York, which has repeatedly shut down mixed martial arts being legalized for pretty much since 1997 when it was first banned, voted 113 to 25 in favor of approving a bill that would see the ban on the sport lifted. So that means we can see cards at Barclays Center, Madison Square Garden, at the Carrier Dome. All of this is good because the governor, Andrew Cuomo, will sign the bill into law. He said multiple times that will happen. So this was the big hook. It had to go through the Senate, which it usually had done. It had to go through committees, which it sometimes had did, sometimes had not. And it had to go through the Assembly, which is the first time it's ever been voted on, and it's gotten through. And this is a big freaking deal for the UFC. Sean, I know you don't have the immediate impact being in Florida, and some people, I couldn't really gauge the opinion nationally because everyone reported on it, but what were your thoughts when you heard about something like that?
My whole thing is, like, right now, they need that market, honestly. The UFC, it needs a new market. I mean, I think it's going to allow for a lot more, again, like I said, where they can do some more East Coast things and almost make it, I won't say like territorial, but I think you can have some, just the fact the first card there is going to be, it's the first time there's going to be an MMA card legally, I guess, technically.
Yes.
At any big arena in New York. I mean, again, we were talking about before, you can hit the Floridas and then cruise up down, to hit the New York area. And then you can kind of space out your pay-per-views, as we talked about before, kind of like what they do with pro wrestling. And I think it's going to allow, some more market. Because you can't say market because the market's strong in New York, even though they haven't been having fights. I mean, It's not like there's no market there already. So, but I mean, I think for the fact that you can have cards there now and not have to travel everywhere is it's going to pay dividends.
It's a big deal for this sake. The UFC is always, and I mean, mixed martial arts in general is a niche sport that's been trying to become mainstream.
Yeah,
that's been the goal of the UFC, for Bellator, World Series of Fighting, all these promotions to try to turn this sport into a mainstream thing. And they've been doing a particularly great job, especially in the past couple of years, of building and building and building. They just unlocked the number one media capital in all of the world in New York. So Madison Square Garden, while it doesn't have the impact ticket sales wise of a stadium show, like, for example, Cowboy Stadium in Dallas or whatever, having a card at Madison Square Garden, which at one time, not as much anymore, unfortunately, but at one time was the fight capital of the world. This was the arena where the big fights were held.
Yep.
This opens up a whole new avenue. Basically, that market was so locked, and you had to kind of get into it, but people would have to come down to the Prudential Center in Newark from New York, which, I mean, it's only a 20-minute train ride, but it's just being able to do this kind of thing in New York, especially upstate, and do these smaller cards in Syracuse, in Buffalo. Like, this allows the UFC to have full range. This isn't just unlock New York City. It's a whole bunch of markets that they can tap into that they won't fear of over pushing themselves in these certain places. because you get a good couple years of this is the first time the UFC's in Buffalo. This is the first time the UFC's in Ithaca. This is the first this is you can market and you can do all these certain different things. And it's a major deal. And now the UFC came out and said that their first card in New York may not even be at Madison Square Garden, but their first major New York card will be at MSG. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. Bellator MMA responded saying they're always talking the Barclays Center, which is probably the number 2 arena that you probably want to work with in New York. So lots of positive things come out of this, in my mind at least.
No, yeah, I mean, you're going to have, especially for you guys up there. I mean, and again, and one thing that I don't understand, like even down here, they go to Orlando a lot more than they hit Miami. I don't know if Miami wasn't the draw that they thought it would be and things like that. But it seems like the cards now are pretty much staying up in the Orlando area. Every once in a while they'll come down here to the Hard Rock or something like that. But for the most part, they're staying in Orlando. So I don't think they're going to have that problem in New York. I don't, and if, whether you go to Madison Square Garden, in Brooklyn or any of those around that area there. So, what's gonna be interesting to see is how many of these small cards try to do something big before the UFC does something, and do they water down? I mean, you're ultimately going to go to UFC regardless because the fights are going to be good. But does Bellator go and try to throw another one of those Shamrock Gracie 65 cards again?
Well, it's funny you mention that because I just put up an article that you can find on fullmountainmma.com. Shameless plug, but I mean, hey, what do you expect? It is our podcast.
It is.
There's 3 main events in my mind that could open up MSG on the right note for the UFC. And we'll get into the more detailed in a little bit, but I don't expect the UFC to do Madison Square Garden all of the time because it is really expensive to put on a show.
Yeah, I remember you said something about that, yeah.
Yeah, just the way unions work and the way you just seem like there's a reason why WWE was at the Barclays Center as much as it was, especially for TV stuff. And it would not surprise me if you see a great big Madison Square Garden card, but then they kind of go away from it a little bit, and then they'll come back in a couple years or whatever the case may be. But for sure, Lorenzo Fertitta said it. Dana White said it on occasion. They have a date reportedly booked for November. The first big New York show will be at Madison Square Garden. And I'm going to throw out my 3 main event ideas, and I want to get your reaction to each one of them. For me, the biggest fight possible is Jon Jones versus Rumble Johnson in November for the light heavyweight champ. Of course, this is assuming.
I was going to say that's jumping ahead, isn't it?
It is jumping ahead, but with UFC 197 coming up, I think Jones is going to beat Cormier. I said it on multiple occasions leading up to this fight, and I'll eat crow if Cormier goes out and does something possible, because that's what it is with Jones. Because remember, he's never lost. The only time he quote unquote lost was a disqualification for raining elbows upon Matt Hamill, where he was destroying him in the first round of that fight. So if you're gonna do New York, Jon Jones is from New York. And a lot of people, everyone's talked about Weidman as being the face of this New York push, which he has been. He's been all over the place campaigning and making this happen. He's not the biggest fighter ever to come out of New York. That's Jones. And I think he beats DC. And if he beats DC, there's no point for a third fight, at least in the immediate future, because he'd be 2-0 against Cormier. So I go Jones, Rumble Johnson, MSG, light heavyweight belt, November. What's your opinion on that sort of scenario? I think that's the big fight that should headline it.
This is what I'll do. I want to hear what your other ones are first, so I can.
Okay.
Because I have another one in mind just in case, but since I want to hear what your 3 are, and then I'll go back and break down each one because I want to see. I don't want to kind of jump ahead and be like, oh, I think this fight, and if that's one of the other fights. So I'll listen to what you have first, and then I'll break it down.
Second one's Rousey Tate, and this would be Ronda Rousey's return fight. So
you wouldn't have Tate getting back in until when are they saying this card would take place?
This would be in November, this is the tricky part with this fight. If Miesha Tate fights Cyborg in May, that's not for the title. That's a catchweight bout. That's just a fun fight to see what happens. And then you're looking at what? A 6-month layoff for Tate?
Yeah.
We saw what happened with Holly Holm when she wanted to, quote, stay busy. And I know Dana White killed her and her manager for taking that fight so easily, so quickly. If you tell Miesha Tate that Ronda Rousey wants to come back in November, she's sticking to her timeline. She's not coming back faster than we thought. She wants to fight you at Madison Square Garden in the main event of the UFC's first ever card at Madison Square Garden in New York City, the number one media market in the world, where if you beat Ronda Rousey, you could not only eliminate her from the sport, because I don't know if Rousey would even want to continue fighting, just the way her mentality is and the way she's beaten Miesha. And all of a sudden she comes back and can't beat Holm or Tate. It's got to throw something into her psyche. And Tate can elevate herself to Rousey levels of superstardom. I think you could wait till then and fight. That's just my take. If Miesha Tate wanted to become this superstar that the UFC could market completely, I think that's the other spot. And the last option that I had, I think is the least likely out of all of them, would be McGregor Frankie Edgar for the featherweight belt, because it seems like we're getting McGregor Diaz 2 in July. So it would go along with Conor's not taking a lot of time off between fights, because he's not going to fight Edgar or Aldo at 200, it seems. And I don't think McGregor will go down to 145 ever again. It just seems more and more like he doesn't want to make that weight cut. I could be wrong, but it just seems more and more like it'd be it's really difficult for him to do that. So I don't know if it'll ever happen again. But I mean, that fight books itself and sells out very easily, because trust me, I can tell you from experience, from my own heritage, there's a lot of Irish, there's a lot of Italians in the New Jersey, New York City area. The flight is shorter from Ireland to New York rather than Ireland to Las Vegas. That would be a massive, massive fight. So those are my three big options that I think the UFC would go with. Johnson is my first choice. Rousey, Tate, and then McGregor, Edgar.
So I'm guessing, though, you don't think Weidman can beat Rockhold?
I don't think they would have Weidman headline. That's my thing there. I think Weidman Rockhold 3 could be easily the co-main event. I don't think they would have Weidman headline against Rockhold in that card.
I think it can be depending on how good this fight is. I mean, you could build up one of those. I mean, I don't think you go wrong with any of the three you said either. I don't know. I mean, like you said, Weidman kind of became the face of the whole charge with them going to New York. So I mean, I think he's gonna be on the card definitely, regardless. If
yes,
he wins or loses, I think he'll be on the card. But I think if he wins and it's a belt, I think they could. And again, it all goes to. I mean, we're jumping ahead saying Weidman's going to be Rockhold. We're saying Jones is beating, Cormier. We're saying Tate should hold off until November if she wants to cash in on the payday. McGregor dropping back down to 145. It's a lot of what ifs, and
it's November. It's far away.
What's funny too is that on top of all that, it could be none of those.
It could be none of those. About it.
Depending on how these fights go. I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see. And I agree. I mean, I think if everything plays out, I mean, that card could be probably the card of the year, depending on how they work this out.
The only thing bigger than this card will probably be UFC 200. And my thinking is Jon Jones is not going to turn around and fight at UFC 200.
No way. Unless he gets like a 2-second knockout and he's just got to rest his hand.
Yeah. So Jones is the guy. Like, if you had the option, if you're Neil Silva or Sean Shelby, and I say you can if Weidman beats Rockhold in June, right? and I say you can either choose Jon Jones, Rumble Johnson, or Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman 3 as your main event at Madison Square Garden, what are you going to choose?
I think it goes down to how good was the Rockhold Weidman 2.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if it's a back and forth fight and it's like, a slugfest, I mean, because ultimately what's going to happen is, I mean, your co-main event and your main event, honestly, I mean, on some of these cards, you could flip, especially when you do like a UFC 200 and a thing. I mean, you can't have everybody headline. But at the same time, I see what you're saying. Maybe they do Jon Jones just to put him on top. But I don't think it would take away from, Weidman and Rockhold. I think it would be a tougher decision than what you may think for the UFC matchmakers.
The UFC's had a weird promotional relationship with Jon Jones too, so it would not be the most surprising thing if that happened. But to me, when you just look at it, Jon Jones may be the greatest mixed martial art fighter of all time. Period. Mm-hmm. And the fact, if he beats Daniel Cormier, and you put him against a guy like Rumble, who at any opportunity, even Jon Jones could get knocked out. I think it's just that it's so easy to sell that, and you put Weidman on that card too, and you could put anybody else from New York that you want to put on that card. You put Aljamain Sterling, Ali Akinta.
Honestly, with any of the three, and even if you throw Weidman in there, I think if you put any of them four in the top, that card's going to sell itself in that area anyways.
It's just,
I don't think you're going to need much. My problem though is with Jon Jones. I know Rumble has the knockout strength and the power and stuff like that, but would that be better? Like if this Rockhold Weidman 2 was like a slugfest and they're both, I'm going to throw it out and say it's like Lawler McDonald, and then he wins it in the end. I think they give the edge to Weidman Rockhold.
I really want to see what happens with this, because depending on how the UFC has created, Weidman is something that the UFC has helped build personally, and he's a great fighter, and he seems like a great person from everything that I've heard about, and he's done a great job promoting this, and he's been
not only that, but then
through the whole ride.
He's got to beat Rockhold, which last fight he was so outclassed. I mean, he's got to have a great camp.
And that's another thing too. If Rockhold beats Weidman, it's Weidman Bisping in November. Maybe co-main event.
Maybe
that'd be fun.
He would definitely be then.
Yes.
If he loses, and definitely either or he'll be somewhere on the card. But I don't even know if you can put him at depending on how bad he loses or how
And the other two names that we would probably throw into this somewhere in the UFC ether, George St. Pierre and Robbie Lawler. If Lawler is headlining 170, we don't know if he is. I mean, if McGregor Diaz is headlining,
you mean 200, right?
200, yeah, because they fight at 170. Excuse me.
I'm like 170. We went back 20.
Yeah, but where is George St. Pierre going to be? Is he going to be with the UFC? Is he not? Are they what's the whole deal here? If McGregor beats Diaz at 170 and George St. Pierre wants to fight Conor McGregor, even though the UFC said that's off the board, is that a fight? Nate Diaz goes and beats Conor. Is he somebody you can use as a headliner? It's a good problem to have, but to me, Jon Jones is the fight, and I think we'll see.
And then also you have to think about this though. There's pay-per-views all the way in
leading
between
up
there.
to it.
People have to, they have to fill out those cards as well, and injuries happen, and will something happen to where they have to be forced to maybe put one of those guys on one of the cards right before that. So, it's going to be a very, it's almost like we'll talk about it a little bit later on, but we can play matchmaker here and come up with our own dream scenarios, but it's really going to end up being, people performing in the ring. And look how quickly everybody's kind of forgotten names that they were trying to throw up there right now.
Yeah.
You had your Paige Van Zant, your Sage Northcutt, your all these guys, Ronda Rousey was being, like the next thing, Conor McGregor, which they still are, don't get me wrong, because as soon as their name is mentioned in a fight, it's going to probably sell out. But, you get that steam, and all it takes is that one fight, and now you're just hanging on almost. And then will you be in that fight? Or will they say, hey, look, we got to – I mean, you're talking about, 200 is going to be in July sometime?
Yes.
So July –
I think it's the July 4th weekend.
So you're looking at about 4 months of fights leading up to there. And then in that July, they're probably going to try to do something big where they do a Friday fight, a Saturday or whatever. Saturday will be the US 200, maybe a fight night on Sunday.
Yeah.
Something like that. So then now you got to fill in all those fights. And they've been averaging like some asinine amount of fights on each card for some reason. They're going to have to try to figure out how they're going to do that because depending on their cards there, I mean, the last week they had 8 fights and, again, another like 8 fights in 3 weekends or something, 5 weekends, something like that. I mean, you can't keep that schedule up and space these guys out fighting so far apart and try to line up that fight for Madison Square Garden.
It's really true. I mean, we can talk until we're blue in the face, but like you said, we're 7-8 months out.
Yeah,
lots of things can happen, but I'm just happy that we can have this conversation.
No,
it's
great.
real.
It's great for us. I mean, it gives us a whole lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm. And I'll be in the house for that MSG card.
I bet you will, buddy. I bet you will.
You can bet. You can place a bet on that and win. I will be in the house. The first UFC card at Madison Square Garden. We got a lot of stuff to talk about on the show coming up. This break before our last podcast, the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor news. I feel like it broke after. I don't feel like we've talked about this.
No, we haven't talked about it yet, I don't think.
So yeah, we're going to talk about the fact that it seems like they're running back Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor at 170 pounds for the UFC 200 main event.
Well, no, I heard 155 from somebody. Was that not accurate?
This is something. This is good because the fact that it's at 170 and 155 has been debated about. It's been reported at 170, and because of that reporting, there may have been a change at the UFC's on Fox staff. That's something we have to talk about as well. There was some fight news announced involving a pair of undefeated fighters headlining a UFC fight night. And we could jump into Jones Cormier a little bit later on in the show because we'll be talking about that in the lead up. It's about less than a month away. And I've obviously said what I've said about Cormier Jones. I really want to get your take because we haven't really devolved into it. And I know your wrestling background. I want to ask about how Cormier is going to be able to, somehow defeat this Goliath of a guy that we've been seeing out of Jon Jones and all these comeback training videos and everything we've heard about his training. So we'll talk about a lot of those things and a little bit more when we come back on TFM Live, the official podcast from FullMountMMA.com.
For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to the FullMountMMA.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley.
Welcome back, everybody, to TFM Live. I'm Brian Coyle, joined along with Sean Stanley. And Sean, this news broke after our podcast last week. It looks like we have Conor McGregor's next fight, and it's something we literally just saw. It was reported by MMAfighting.com's Ariel Helwani last week that Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 2 is in the works for UFC 200. And this isn't a fight at 155 pounds, supposedly. This is a rematch, literally, at welterweight. So it's the same fight, headlining UFC 200 in all likelihood. What do you think about this?
I mean, I hate to say the term too soon.
It is too soon.
I mean, that is what, we just saw it. What's going to change now within, May, June? You got about 3-4 months. I guess he can prepare a little bit better. But, I mean, he's still going to be fighting.
At welterweight.
Yeah, which he looked terrible. And I understand you can try to transfer. Maybe you can work it a little bit better this time or something.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he didn't look like himself. So I don't know what I mean, they're just trying to build on, and maybe they're trying to build on it for Diaz because they're trying to make him happy too. But I don't think it's a fight that McGregor. Yeah, I just don't. I think there's other fights out there that could have made money.
Yes. This is probably a McGregor fight, picked fight. He probably wants to avenge his loss.
Yeah.
And that's. I mean, the pay-per-view buys were great. The reaction after the fight was great. Diaz has been on a little media tour actually recently. He was on Extra. He was on Fox Sports, obviously, with the connections the UFC has.
Yeah, well, I think they're trying to make him more likable.
Yeah, and he doesn't like the media stuff.
No,
like you can tell he's uncomfortable. Like he doesn't want to do this. He wants to fight.
Because it kind of, I don't say put it to muzzle on him, but it kind of does because he can't be himself.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not that guy that's going to sit on TV and be like, well, you know, this is what I need to do. You know, he wants to be like, you know, F-bombs everywhere.
Bleep this, yeah. His interview with Jay and Dan on Fox Sports Live, though, was very entertaining. I recommend going back and watching that. He at one point, Chael Sonnen gets mentioned, and also Fox Sports Live audio guy gets into it with Nate. It's a very fun and entertaining interview. But this fight, it's funny because every UFC fan, out of the people I've talked to and friends, were like, "Oh yeah, didn't they just do that fight?" Mm-hmm. And that was their immediate response. But anybody who was more of a casual fight fan or watched it because it was a big deal and was like, "Oh, they're gonna do that again. That's pretty cool."
Yeah.
So I'm getting both sides to this, and some people love the idea, and some people hate it. It's a fight that will make money. That's the most important thing.
It's going to make money, and that's the thing they want to do. But I just and what 200 is going to be in the
T-Mobile Arena. They're opening it up.
That new one,
Las
right?
Vegas.
The new Las Vegas Arena. How many is that seat now?
20,000, I think.
20,000. Yes, I mean that's easily going to be. That could easily be that. I mean, I think that fight there is one of those ones that could boost attendance if you strengthen the card to do that AT&T Stadium card we talked about.
Yeah, it's 20,000 for the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It will be a fun fight, but I think this is a short-term gain and a long-term loss.
Yeah, I mean,
you're capitalizing on the popularity of these guys, but the loser of this fight is going to get killed.
No, not necessarily. I think if McGregor loses, if Conor loses, it's I'm not gonna say over, but I mean, that's a lot of steam. 2 losses in a row. Mm. And if Diaz loses, it's almost a win-win for Diaz because he's only worried about the payday anyways. It's obviously they're not going to give him a title shot.
No, he
now
said he
would have
doesn't
been the
want
perfect time. No, I know that he wants money. He wants the money fights, but this would have been a perfect time to capitalize on him getting a shot at a title. And having McGregor, you could have had them, be on the same card in a main event, co-main event type deal, and then maybe worked on the fight after that if both of them are successful. But now you're just throwing them right back in there just to make the buck.
Yeah, if you keep them apart, you create more and more buzz, and it can create a long-term story, if you will. I don't think Conor wanted to cut down so quickly. And I think he wanted to fight Diaz to get his win back. Now, who's the favorite right now in this fight? It's Nate Diaz, right?
I mean, I would think so, but you never know.
Yeah, that to me, if I'm picking this fight right now, I don't know if I can sit here and say that I think Conor McGregor is going to win the fight. I don't think I can say that because the way Conor tried to fight wasn't conducive to Diaz, and Conor's never fought a style of fight that will beat Nate Diaz. He doesn't fight like that. He goes for the heavy knockout, and all those heavy punches did in the first round was wake Diaz up and get him into the flow because McGregor was toast and gassed by round 2.
Yeah, because he's carrying almost 15 pounds more than he normally would probably on going into the fight. So. And we both said he looked kind of soft. He didn't look as crisp on his punches. So
yeah. So we'll see. I thought it would be a featherweight title defense, but if he's not going to defend that belt, if he's not going to defend it in his next fight, I doubt we see Conor ever go down to 145. That's just the way it goes.
I mean, to me, if I'm UFC, I just say, look, this is the match. I would just make a 145 interim championship match right there on that card.
Oh, I would absolutely do that.
Right there
Edgar
on the card.
Aldo.
Yeah, I'd just be like, look, whatever you want to do, you do it. But we're going to have an interim champion. If you want to drop back down to 145, then we can unify the belts. But until then, I don't see you going back to 145. I would so put that on the line.
Absolutely. And how crazy is that Rafael dos Anjos' foot has completely changed the entire world of the UFC, just based on the fact that he broke his foot in training. And we had so many different things. We could have had a 2-division champion. We could have had McGregor knocked back down to 145. Instead, he's at welterweight again against Nate Diaz. This is not the way the story was supposed to be written for Conor McGregor, but it's an interesting side note.
Yeah, it definitely had to take a detour.
I'm very surprised by this, and we'll see how it goes.
I just think it's an easy approach from UFC to take, which it's an approach I don't think they should take.
Yeah. It's just unusual to me. It's still going to be a great fight. It's still going to be a great event. Other fights reportedly for UFC 200, Cain Velasquez versus Travis Brown, Gegard Mousasi versus Derek Brunson are rumored for that. And I don't know, but there's lots more to be revealed with this card, possibly involving the welterweight division itself, Robbie Lawler. And we don't know if GSP is going to return or not. This is this month. It's kind of a weird period. The UFC not going against the NCAA tournament as much because right now there's no card this weekend. There's no card next weekend, and then you have Ben Rothwell and Junior Dos Santos on April 10th. But last weekend we had a card in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. And, man, Mark Hunt is so fun to watch, man.
Well, you can't take your eyes off TV because you never know when he's going to unload that bomb.
It literally, I tweeted that this could be a flash KO right before the fight.
Yeah.
And that Mark Hunt would win in the first round. And that isn't something that I'm bragging about because you could have easily said that. I mean, I was right, but you could have easily said that about Mark Hunt literally any time in the past 5 fights.
Well, you say it about any fight he's in. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. He throws absolute freaking bombs. And that whole card itself was a really fun card. We had the surprising win of Daniel Kelly in the 3rd round over Antonio Carlos Jr. You had Jake Matthews beating Johnny Case by a 3rd-round submission, and Matthews is a guy that they're slowly trying to build up a little bit.
You had a referee try to give lumbar brain damage.
Oh, yeah, that was – let's talk about this one for a second before we get to Mark Hunt. Mm-hmm. Steve Percival, if he's getting repeatedly hit in the face, I don't know, for a minute and a half and not defending himself, maybe you call the fight. Maybe just a little bit.
I like how the announcers were trying to say I think he's trying to give him the benefit of the doubt like he did for Magny in the first round. Magny was still defending himself.
Yeah, and there was he
was trying to stand up and he was trying to do this. He was flat out just getting punched
completely. Big John McCarthy was on a podcast with Joey Diaz, one of Joe Rogan's comedian buddies, and talked about basically what was going on. He made that exact point that you just said. Magny was defending himself. He was intelligently making moves to he was knocked to the ground.
Yeah, no, yeah. He was a little wobbly, but he was still trying to stand up, and he had his hand guarding his face.
Yep.
He was making moves to show that he knew what was going on.
The point that he made was when a guy gets lit up and he's falling to the ground, if someone's out on their feet and then gets woken up by when they hit the floor, That's not good. Like that's not the way it works. But if Magny was trying to brace his fall, like he took a big hit, but he was trying to make moves to get out of harm's way. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened in the first round. The second round, Lombard, so tired, he couldn't do anything. Magny jumps on top of him and is just beating the hell out of him.
He put his hands like over his face a little bit to try to, I don't even know if you can say he was blocking him. He just covered his face to where he wasn't getting, I don't know what that defense was. He just wasn't really.
Called the moneymaker defense.
I guess,
You protect the moneymaker. Yeah. And the fact that it got out of the second round was insane. And then it's this third round immediately. Oh, here we go again. It's like Steve Percival was just kind of looking at him like, you're really not gonna try to defend yourself, huh?
Well, no, he told him in the round. He's like, if you do that again, they said on the broadcast that Percival went over to the thing and said, look, if you get any trouble this fight, I'm stopping it in this round. And as soon as he did it, he stopped it.
I'm glad it took that long.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's like, what made you think he was going to be any better that round than what he had? I mean, he was out. He was gassed out, man. He was gassed.
And I bet you the people who voted against mixed martial arts in New York were just shown that clip and nothing else.
Just don't give Percival a license to officiate in New York, all right?
And this is the thing, because a lot of people don't know that the athletic commissions pick the referees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not the UFC picks the referees. It's that the athletic commissions, it's their duty to pick the referees. Like the UFC will give them a list and be like, pick these guys. And
they give them a list of recommendations that suggestions that they would like to have, but ultimately the committee picks, and it actually picks the fight that they referee too.
Yep. Because like we see the usual suspects like Big John McCarthy, Herb Dean, Mario Yamasaki, Mark Goddard, like guys like that. But then you see like someone like Percival and like all the MMA journalists are like, oh, here we go again. Mm-hmm. Mazzagatti, like he's another guy. Like, oh, geez, this is not gonna end well.
Yeah, it almost takes away from the fight.
Yeah, because it's the referee's job to not only make sure the fighters are okay, but to also get it right. Yeah. And if you're going out there, for lack of a better term, a blind referee, like you don't know what you're doing, and you're just letting you've got the health of these fighters in your hands, and that could have done some serious damage to Hector Lombard. And I hope it doesn't have an impact on the rest of his career. By the way, Magny has won like 10 out of 11 fights.
Yeah, and he's still. I won't say he's not getting respected, but he's seventh in the welterweight division. Seventh. But the UFC rankings are arbitrary and they mean they're just numbers in front of. I mean, I'm probably like 12 on heavyweight right now. I've never even fought a heavyweight fight.
You're ahead of Ruslan Magomedov, Alexei Oleinik, and Stefan Struve. Just to let you know.
And maybe Mir now too.
Yeah, let's move into the main event. Frank Mir, man, that's rough. He just got caught with a bomb, and that was it.
Right above the ear. I mean, it was
Mark Hunt.
I mean, it was. Oh my goodness, man!
He
hit him so hard that he, like Mir went, his body went limp, but then he was like, it was one of those, as you said, like, I guess it was a flash knockout because he hit him, but then like you said, John McCarthy said, like once he hit the ground, he went limp when he first hit, and then it was like, boom, he was right back up to defend himself. But by then it was too late because Hunt could have easily destroyed him. The ref stopped it already. Actually, Hunt just walked away. I'm sorry. That's right. Yeah. Hunt just hit him and just walked away, and the ref called it because before Mir hit, he was just out. And then but once he hit the mat, it was funny because he hit the mat and he kind of like when it looked like a defensive posture. But I mean, by then it would have been too late because Hunt was already would have pounced on him, but Hunt had already walked away.
Yeah, it's that mantra where you're out and then you're up once you get woken once you get woken up by the mat.
It's like that fighter, it's a mentality. As soon as you get hit, like wrestlers most of the time try to stay off their backs. Yeah. And you see it when they get knocked out, they kind of go to their side. It's just a reaction.
Yeah, and for Hunt, I mean, regardless of he's just that kind of guy. He will wait and find his spot and then throw that punch. And then if you notice, Hunt's knockouts are all in the same spot usually. Mm-hmm. He hits right behind that temple, and it's just out like a light.
Ear area. Yep.
And a lot of the top heavyweights above Mark Hunt are booked right now, so he's going to play the waiting game with, Velasquez, Miocic, Overeem, Rothwell, Dos Santos, Arlovsky, Brown. All those guys above him are already set up in fights. But in these next couple of months, he'll be able to kind of pick and choose and where you want to throw him in. And he's still got a little bit of juice left in him until he stops. Mark Hunt seems to be – this is a little bit of a career renaissance here. For Mir, I don't know where he goes because when you look at his last 7 fights, he's 2-5. He's lost to Cormier, Barnett, Overeem, Arlovsky, and Hunt. He's beaten Bigfoot Silva and Todd Duffy. No offense to those guys, but I don't know where Frank Mir's place is right now in the heavyweight division.
Mir now is going to be, we need to get that place, that filler for a heavyweight fight. Put Mir there. That's what he's going to be if he wants to fight again.
Yeah.
You're not going to be, or he's going to be a fight night guy, and because I think his name can do good for like those fight night cards and things like that, or your fight passes. But I don't think you'll see him like headlining or anything like that, main events, or even on a main card of a pay-per-view right now.
For sure. But the guy's had a terrific career already. So if you wanted to call it quit.
I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I just think with these losses piling up, I don't see how.
Yeah, I don't know how it can go any higher than right now, than where he is. A quick note I want to get to until we take our final break and then talk about Cormier Jones for a little bit. Cody Garbrandt, Thomas Almeida, battle of unbeaten bantamweights. Say that 5 times.
Yeah, good luck.
Will headline UFC Fight Night 88, which is the Memorial Day weekend card in Vegas, I believe. I think it's the Mandalay Bay. That's a really interesting fight because bantamweight, we've talked about this, doesn't really have any, like, it's doing Cruz favor again. Mm-hmm. And you have Dillashaw and you have Rafael Sunsao. But then at the rest, you have these young guns, and Garbrandt Almeida is something we usually don't see with having 2 undefeated fighters, that kind of, in that middle sort of spot going up against each other, because this will kill one of the other's momentum, obviously, with their first loss in the UFC, but not completely. But it's a really fun fight. Like that matchmaking to me is great because we'll get to see. This is basically both of their first opportunities against a high level talent.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
And again, it's almost an easier. It's like these fights are kind of falling in the UFC matchmakers' laps. If you start looking around, you start, okay, this guy's fighting this guy, this guy's here. Oh, wait a minute, look at these two.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, this guy just fell in our lap here. Okay, let's do that. And again, they do such a great job. But with the influx of young talent that's coming in too, again, that's what I was saying. Like, it'll be interesting to see how many cards they have in between and how people, fill out these cards, because there's still other weight divisions that really haven't got that upper echelon shine yet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other. We haven't seen Jacek, she fought the last time on that.
Gadelia.
Yeah, but they're doing the tough, right?
Yes.
So she probably won't fight until that season's over.
Yeah, they'll fight it the fight week in July before UFC 200.
200, okay, so they'll fight in July. So I'm just trying to think of like some of these cards as you start filling out leading up to 200 and then past 200 leading up into now the Madison Square Garden card, or whatever we're going to call that now.
Yep.
When you're looking ahead, these are the guys that are going to have to fill out some of these cards, and you're wondering, can they do it?
Yeah, and I think watching I've watched pretty much, since Almeida walked in, it just seems like every fight card, this before I was even like as heavy as I'm into the sport as I am now, Almeida is a really fun fighter to watch. And I think he's the favorite in this. But Garbrandt had an opportunity to fight John Lineker. It didn't happen because of Lineker got, I think, dengue fever. That was on the Pittsburgh card that he was supposed to fight.
Yeah, I do remember that, yep.
So Garbrandt's got a real opportunity here to take down the momentum of Almeida and throw himself into the mix at bantamweight. And also, Renan Barão is on this card as the co-main event. The former bantamweight champ gets Jeremy Stephens.
Yeah, he's moving up his first.
This is his first fight at featherweight in the UFC. Stephens is an interesting one because he has not had it as of late.
He's kind of like the Frank Mir of that division.
He's part of entertaining fights, though.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think that's why they kind of put him out there, because he's a name. People know his name. It gives entertaining fights. Again, I think as long as you're entertaining and you give,
you got a shot.
Yeah, because the one guy, Clay Guida,
oh my God.
He wasn't like he was like undefeated. He lost probably more than he won, but every fight was entertaining, and he kept getting up there on the card because people wanted to see him.
Yeah. Hey, Guida Sanchez may be one of my that's in my top 3 favorite fights of all time. Mm-hmm. That fight between Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida, just so fun to watch. So this is the kind of matchmaking we're looking at. It's a great point, because you're gonna, in between these massive cards, the UFC's got to keep up its momentum.
Yeah,
and
you have to rely on some cards that might not have your marquee names on it to come through.
Yeah, and this unstoppable tour that they're doing: Rothwell Dos Santos, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Tony Ferguson, Overeem Arlovsky, Almeida Garbrandt, Rory McDonald, and Wonderboy Thompson. These are potential star-making fights, and not superstar level fights, but like you could throw a lot of these guys into the main event scene at whatever, or at the championship scene, excuse me, whatever weight class they are. So that's really fun, and we'll see how it goes. Well, how about this? Take one more quick break, and we can jump into this Cormier Jones discussion, because I've been, I guess, heavy-handed with my pick of Jon Jones in this fight that's a month away. I want to get your take on what Cormier has to do, because it just seems like this is a foregone conclusion to a lot of people that Jon Jones is going to get his light heavyweight championship belt back. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back on TFM Live, the official podcast, The Full Mount.
For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to thefullmountmma.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley.
Welcome back, everybody. TFM Live. Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley here for our final segment of the show. And before we get to the Cormier Jones talk, Sean, I put up my review of UFC 2, the video game. You can see it right now on the website. What did you think? Have you gotten the game into your possession?
Well, we discussed what happened with mine. I haven't been able to switch it yet, so yeah. But I did see the graphics. I have been able to, go through some of the things, and it's a real cool game. It is a real cool game.
It's unfortunate that the Xbox One copy has encountered some glitches.
Yeah.
For me, it didn't happen, so it didn't affect my review of the game. But
my guy bent over backwards and jumped out of the cage.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to get back in the cage.
Out of the cage.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to get back in.
That one's new.
Oh, it was terrible. I'm watching it going, what is going on here?
He just didn't want. He didn't want none.
That's pretty much what it was. Not, it's like it's when it was, as you said, the opening. Which was the McDonald Lawler fight. You come out to shake hands. It tells you to do what to do to shake the hand or touch gloves. I did that. All of a sudden, Robbie Lawler bent over backwards and ended up outside the cage. I don't know what happened.
Lawler didn't want any of that fifth round.
No, he was done in that fifth round. I was like, come on, man. You win this one.
Yeah, come on. You know the story. Okay, well, I hope that gets fixed. And like I said, go check out my review on fullmountmma.com. Find it on Twitter as well, at the Full Mount, at BeatCoil11 for me, at SS Sports Talk. And Sean's probably tweeting about the sadness of Miami basketball right now, because it's not looking good for the Hurricanes. But we'll move on to a happier topic.
But when you have a team shooting 62% from the field 66% from 3. That's what happens.
Hey, they're also hitting shots from the parking lot.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, man. This get both teams. And I'm sorry to talk about basketball, but
no, go for it.
I mean, the Canes are 57% from the field.
Wow.
64% from the 3-point line, and they're down by almost 20.
Oh, jeez. Can't do anything about that.
Nope.
That's what I mean. When Michigan State encountered that buzzsaw from Middle Tennessee State, sometimes you can't do anything about it. It just happens. It just happens. Something that I think will happen is Jon Jones beating Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, you kind of made that clear.
Yeah. So I want to get your take here. How does Daniel Cormier go about beating Jon Jones? You got a wrestling background.
You're going to hate me for this, man. You're going to hate me, dude, because we say it all the time. This is like our go-to thing on this podcast.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm going to say, right?
Go for it.
He's going to have to make it an ugly fight. He's going to have to take him down, hold him down, rough him up. And again, it's easier said than done, too, because Jon Jones ain't no slouch.
Jon Jones may be the GOAT.
You know, I mean, this guy ain't no slouch. Ain't like he's just going to let you take him down, you know what I'm saying? But he's going to have to, mix up his levels, come at him different angles. He's going to have to do stuff that he hasn't done before, which, as you said, which is why it leads me to, I think he's going to get caught with something from Jones. And that's why, because he's going to have to switch it up. You can't just come at Jon Jones ain't just going to sit there and watch you shoot in on him and let you take him down. He's going to have to switch up levels. He's going to have to throw. He's going to have to do something that totally takes Jon Jones out of his game.
Okay, I'm going to give you a stat. Guess the percentage of takedowns that Jon Jones has stuffed or avoided in his UFC career.
It's between 95 and 100 probably.
You hit it right on the head. It's 95%.
Yeah. I think he's been taken down like once or twice, if that.
Cormier took him down once in their previous fight.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I love DC. He's a great announcer. I enjoy his work on UFC tonight. I enjoy watching him fight. That Gustafsson fight in Houston was a really fun fight to watch. The Rumble fight, he executed brilliantly what his game plan was. But man, it's gonna take the best performance of his career. I think Jon Jones is better now than he was when he was champion. And Jones,
but no. Sorry, why do you say that he's better now? I mean, have you seen something? Have you seen him doing in the cage lately?
The reason why I say this is this: Jon Jones, before the run-in with the law, before the hit-and-run accident, before the cocaine test, Jon Jones didn't seem like he took everything as seriously as he should have. And which is scary because of how talented he is. Everything that I see coming out of Jackson Wink, and it could be just, gym publicity. And everything, the way he looks better now than he's ever looked before. And we've talked about it on the show. Like, we don't know how he's going to make weight, like down to 205. Like,
I mean, isn't that one of the big things? Like, I mean, we can sit here and talk about this fight all the time. What if he doesn't make weight?
I mean, that would be insane if he didn't make weight. Like, but he said himself, he said that he's probably got 3 fights left in light heavyweight before he moves up to heavyweight. And I just don't see it. When we look at Cormier too, and we look at guys like that, we don't know how they go down to 205. They do.
Well, Cormier, I can see a little bit more. Like, when you look at Jones, he doesn't look like he's got a lot to lose. Cormier, you look at him and say, okay, he could drop a couple more.
Yeah. But this is the kind of thing I'm saying, and it's going to be a fun fight. I can't wait for it. I mean, the build-up has been great, and the way the UFC has been pumping this fight up has been great. But Jones just seems like a war machine, man, for lack of a better term. He's a guy that just – that 84-inch reach – I could never get over the fact that Jon Jones' reach. 84-inch reach on a guy, which is insane. I just don't see how Cormier can shoot for takedowns. I don't see how he can rough – like, he got that one slam in that fight.
But you got to remember something. He ain't been in the cage in a long time. And you can train and you can do everything else you want to do. Mm-hmm. When that adrenaline starts going, sometimes that is a heavy burden to carry.
The question, my answer to that question is, Dominic Cruz has said this: ring rust only exists if you believe it.
Yeah, but Dominic Cruz is also a lot lighter. He
lot
hasn't
smarter.
been working out as much as Jon Jones has. Jon Jones has changed his physique a little bit too.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened when some people try to change their physique. They ain't the same person.
Yeah, the argument I would make to that is his game isn't predicated on speed.
No, it's not. It's not. I'm not saying that he's not going to. I'm just saying there's a lot of unknowns. The same thing I said with Dominic Cruz, which Dominic Cruz made me eat my words.
Yeah.
And Jon Jones will probably make me eat my words. I'm not going to sit there and say that he probably won't.
Uh-huh.
But for everybody to say, like, everybody just automatically thinking Jon Jones, because you're thinking of the Jon Jones before all this happened, and is it the same Jon Jones?
That's the question that we have to answer, and it'll be fun. I don't want to go full preview on this, but it is Jon Jones at one point was you could make the argument he's the greatest of all time, and if he comes in and looks mortal against DC, and a whole bunch of questions open up. I just don't see it happen. I will eat my words. Like I said, there was 0% chance that Holm would beat Rousey. But again, that's what we saw leading up to the fight.
0.01% chance that she'd beat.
Yeah, like that's. But what we saw leading up, we didn't see that Holly Holm ever. So, and I mean, we didn't think Rousey would.
And we haven't seen that Holm since.
Yeah, there you go. All right, is there anything else you wanted to hit on here?
No,
Sean,
I think I burned enough bridges for tonight.
The hurricanes are going down, so you just.
The hurricanes are going down. I'm just calling out Holm, Jon Jones, whatever. You know, I'm just Frank Mir, whatever.
Yeah, there goes our connections to Jackson Lake.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, it's just the best gym in the.
Yeah, no. As long as you're on the show, we'll be all right. I'll just stay quiet.
Yeah, I mean, and then the fact that I say it's the best gym, Faraz Sahabi would have something to say about that too. So thank you guys for listening. Again, you can find us online at the Full Mount, at BCool11, at SS Sports Talk, thefullmountmma.com for all your latest analysis on the UFC, even Bellator. We do mention it when it's appropriate. We haven't mentioned it in a while
because it hasn't been appropriate.
That's true.
But how about the UR fights this weekend, huh? Oh yeah.
All I knew is Riff Raff was there.
Yeah, he interfered in the Kurt Angle Rey Mysterio match.
I thought this was an MMA bout.
No, it was pro wrestling. Best 2 out of 3 falls.
But why was Michael Bisping and Chael Sonnen there?
They did a grappling contest that went to a draw.
Oh,
and Michael Bisping was laughing through it, and Chael Sonnen, I think, was trying to win, but he couldn't win.
That is officially the weirdest pay-per-view I've ever heard of.
And then the boxer, I thought it was like boxing versus MMA, but it was just an MMA guy that turned into a boxer, and it was like his first pro fight, and he got killed.
Again, something that the legislators who voted against MMA probably watched over the weekend.
But there's somebody I follow on Facebook, Kobe Ortiz. He fought on the undercard of it and had a 3rd-round TKO.
Oh, congratulations to him.
Mm-hmm. There
you go.
They had a lot of legends there. Don Fry, Seven was there. So, so it was good for the young mixed martial artists that were there that, got to see some of the roots of their art.
Yeah, and sometimes things in the past maybe should stay in the past. we can leave it at that.
Although the Kurt Angle Rey Mysterio match got voted match of the night.
Well, I'm glad. The guy with a broken freaking neck and Rey Mysterio, who has no knee ligaments anymore, can still go. Oh, man. Professional wrestling, not the safest sport in the world by any stretch. But also, we got some things that were floating around. Hopefully, this podcast will end up on iTunes in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this, but I think I have found a way to do it. So,
and then also, hopefully, we'll be making another announcement.
Yes,
going forward as well, which
with the show.
Yeah.
So that would be fun. And of course, you can find this on YouTube as well. We'll have YouTube links in the article, as well as on our Twitters at The Full Mount, where you can follow for that. So pretty much all I got, Sean. How about you?
That's all I got. I want to thank you for your time. Congratulations, New York.
Yeah.
And check out thefullmountmma.com.
Yeah, MSG, we're coming for you. Thank you guys for listening.
The TFM Live Podcast is brought to you by thefullmountmma.com. Check us out on Twitter at The Full Mount.